Hey everyone, it's Scott Hansen from NFL Red Zone reminding you to watch Sports Ballers, the podcast that gets you caught up on everything Washington sports and beyond.
Hello and welcome to the Sports Ballers podcast. This is episode 244. I'm Cory Puffett hosting this week, and I'm joined as always by Eric Meyer and Evan Ash. How are we doing today?
Doing all right. How about yourself?
Doing pretty well. Eric?
Man, I'm a little tired. Just found out that Mike Tirico is actually pronounced Tirico.
You just found this out.
Yes.
He's been on TV for 20 years.
I've seen him. I've heard him talk. I haven't heard anybody say his name on TV.
He says his name at the beginning of every broadcast.
John Gruden would say his name occasionally, even with the last
Well,
name.
maybe I wasn't paying that close of attention. It
Also,
literally
we've
not.
said his name on this podcast.
Yes, we have.
Clearly, I didn't care what y'all's pronunciation of his name was because I just stuck with what I was comfortable with. So.
Oh, okay.
How was your drive over, Evan?
It was fine. It was a little
late.
trafficy. Yeah.
Trafficy, really.
Yeah.
Shocker in this area.
Yeah, can't believe it.
On a
Right.
Tuesday.
I just like how we found out. We didn't find out until 6:40 or so that Eric was going to be late because he had no Wi-Fi at his place.
No bars. It wasn't at my place. It was where I was.
Yes,
Yeah.
at your dance place.
I'm not what you broke ass. I have Wi-Fi at my house.
But then you're the one who's actually holding us up more than what Eric told us that he might be holding us up.
Yeah, this is your fault.
Oh, okay. Well, I was eating dinner, and, it's just been a busy couple weeks.
Well, at least you ate before the podcast for
Yes.
once.
Yeah.
That's not usual for you.
As soon as we get done, gotta run out of here, go back up the road, and do more chores.
More chores.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
You have your own place. You don't have to do chores.
Well, it's a giant mess.
It wasn't that big of a mess. I was there 3 days ago. It looks fine.
Okay.
Anyway, let's go ahead and get to the actual content of our show, which is sports talk. So since I'm hosting this week, I'm going to go ahead and start with the Tour de France, which is in full tilt. We got through the middle third of the tour this past week. Today was the first day of the final stretch to the finish on the Champs-Élysées in Paris this coming Sunday. So I'll start last week on Tuesday, coming out of the rest day, or actually rather Wednesday, because I talked about Tuesday's stage last week on the show. But last Wednesday we had stage 11. Jasper Philipsen once again took the win. It was his fourth stage win this year. He's just been an absolute beast when the sprinters get a chance to take center stage. He also took the maximum points in an intermediate sprint within the peloton, behind the 3 leaders. So not the full 20 points at the intermediate sprint, but the most out of anybody in the peloton having available. The final run up to the finish line was very tricky, and he just found the right wheels to follow into the final 100 meters or so. So he's done a really good job. Thursday, stage 12, was the first day that I missed watching the tour live, so I had to catch the highlights the next day. There was a really wild moment fairly early in the stage with more than 140 kilometers still to go, where a pair of riders went down. David De La Cruz had to abandon, and while Quentin Patcher, the other rider, needed a bike change, his team car stopped on the wrong side of the road, and one of the guys in the car almost caused an accident when he insisted on running through the passing cars and motorbikes to get the new bike to Patcher.
Is this guy trying to get trampled? What are you doing?
I don't know. The team car made an error. You're supposed to, in a situation like that, stop on the right side of the road because all the cars drive on the right, but then that gives the other cars an opportunity to pass on the left.
Mm-hmm.
But because the car pulled over to the left side, now all the cars still driving on the right side, they don't have anybody blocking their way. They're just going to keep going through. Pasher is off of the road on the right side, so he's like trying to find a place. Nobody's stopping, nor really should they. Like,
It's a race.
Yeah, it's a race. Like, these team cars need to try and stay close to the peloton in case one of their riders needs a bike change or needs some water or whatever. Mm-hmm. So, like, their priority is not to stop and be courteous to this, to this other team car that made a dumb mistake.
So you're saying Talladega doesn't have a crosswalk in the middle of it?
No, it does not. Eventually, he just, like, darted through, and a motorbike had to swerve to miss him. Then for a little while in the middle of the stage, it looked like Pogačar and Vingegaard might be itching to attack each other, but they ended up leaving that for the following 3 days, which they spent in the Alps. Instead, it was Jon Izagirre who won the day for Cofidis, which is a big deal because it's the team's second stage win this year after being winless in their first 16 years of operation. So really good for them. Really happy for that sponsor. I mean, a lot of times when a sponsor doesn't, when a team doesn't have a lot of success in the tour, sponsorships don't last. Sponsors pull out, and somebody else has to, assess whether they're willing to, take on sponsoring a team. But they've stuck with them, and they've been rewarded this year. He made a really nice attack on the final climb of the day and held it down the mountain into the finish, winning by about a minute over the next closest rider. So then Friday, we started in the Alps. It was Bastille Day in France, and the finale of the stage was the Col de Grand Colombier. It was 17.6 kilometers of climbing and over 4,000 feet of altitude gain, so a pretty serious climb. Quentin Patcher, a French rider who had crashed the previous day, led the first few kilometers of the final climb before being caught by 3 riders. Again, it's a big deal for Frenchmen to be at the front of the field on Bastille Day. It's an even bigger deal if a Frenchman can hold on and win, which has, I think, only happened like 20-some times over 110 years of the Tour de France. And I don't think it's happened since the early 2010s. It's been probably about 10 years, or maybe just a little bit less than 10 years, since we had a French winner on Bastille Day. The strongest on the day was Polish rider Michael Kwiatkowski. He wound up winning. Once again, a late move by Tadej Pogačar clawed back a few more seconds from Vingegaard's lead, which was under 10 seconds heading into 2 more days in the high mountains. So then we get to Saturday in stage 14. Romain Bardet, one of the best French GC riders over the past decade, had to abandon after a crash early in the stage. With Pogačar slowly eating into his lead with his strong finishes, Jumbo-Visma knew that they had to help Vingegaard put his rival under pressure on the stage. So while UAE had been in control of the peloton the previous day, bringing Pogačar up to the top of the Grand Colombier, at Jumbo-Visma ended up being in control of the peloton heading up the Col de Joplain on stage 14. So that one was 11.6 kilometers of climbing, well over 3,000 feet of elevation gain. They set the pace for Vingegaard while Pogačar rode his wheel. Not that far into the climb, UAE sent a man to the front to take over the pacemaking, I guess trying to put Jumbo-Visma under pressure, and it was successful. Quickly broke 2 of the rival riders, leaving only Sepp Kuss to support Vingegaard. But then out of nowhere, Wout van Aert managed to control his losses, ride back up not only into the group, but then took over the pacemaking. It kind of, I think, freaked out the guy who had been at the front of the group for UAE. He did not expect Wout van Aert to be able to come back after seemingly being put into a lot of stress not that long before. Van Aert didn't last for much longer, but he did take away another one of Pogačar's supporting cast, Rafael Majka, while giving Kuss a few more moments before he had to take over Vingegaard's pacemaking. At one point, Pogačar got a handoff of a water bottle and then dropped it. So there were definitely a lot of issues, if only mentally, for UAE on the final climb. Sepp Kuss got the train inside of 5K to the top, and then Adam Yates took over in support of Pogačar, which allowed Vingegaard to drop back to Pogačar's back wheel. A kilometer later, Pogačar took off, and while Vingegaard was able to respond pretty much immediately, he lost about 20 meters in the first 30 seconds of the effort, and then continued losing ground. But Vingegaard is a much steadier rider than Pogačar. Pogačar is very explosive. Vingegaard kind of keeps his own tempo a lot of times, and so about 2 kilometers later, Vingegaard was right back on Pogačar's wheel, and then took over the pacing, which was an interesting choice, and it backfired when Pogačar got a jump on him. But Vingegaard got a little lucky because a pair of motorbikes forced Pogačar to shut down his attack. They did not move out far enough in front of them. And so when Pogačar went around Vingegaard, he came right up on the back tire of these two motorbikes. And because the crowd tends to collapse in a little bit on the riders on the climbs when the riders are riding a little more slowly, there was no place for him to go around the motorbikes. So the motorbikes very much impacted the day. Both drivers got fined and thrown off the tour the next day.
Why are there motorbikes? What are they doing?
So one of them was a television camera.
Okay.
So they, in order to get like the video and everything during the tour, like a lot of them are on motorbikes. They're either motorbikes or helicopters for the most part.
On helicopters.
Oh yeah, yeah. They also have some helicopters up there.
On a helicopter.
Yeah. And then the other one was just like a photojournalism, like a photography bike. Mm-hmm. And so he was just trying to get the perfect shot. And
while riding a bike at the same time.
Well, yeah. So you have a driver and then the cameraman on the back of the bike.
I thought it was just one person trying to do a lot of stuff.
Wild stuff there. Yeah.
No, think more. I mean, I don't know if you've played Grand Theft Auto 5, but think the mission
on the back,
where the mission where Franklin is riding on the back and trying to get the right shot.
I mean, that's also just about every Grand Theft Auto game has some similar style thing. Yeah.
I'm only familiar with 5. So anyway,
Get familiar with this.
Ultimately, it worked in Vingegaard's advantage. He was able to beat Pogačar to the top of the climb, got maximum points in the King of the Mountains competition, and then he also they swapped some time bonuses between that and the finish line, but they basically finished together. And at that point, Pogačar was 10 seconds behind Vingegaard heading into stage 15 on Sunday. Shortly before the 80-mile mark on a fairly flat, fast stretch of road, a fan was not paying attention to the bikes coming behind him as he was looking up the road, has his camera out, following the bikes as they pass him. And then as he starts to look back, instead of just pulling his hand right into his body, he swings his hand around and it hits a Jumbo-Visma rider. He goes down and like half of the peloton goes down with him. Vingegaard and Pogačar thankfully were riding just far enough to the left of the road that they missed going down. But yeah, fan caused a very serious crash.
Sounds like Mike Tomlin on Thanksgiving Day in 2015.
This is not the first time that this has happened. A couple of years ago, there was a woman who was standing with this really big sign along the Tour de France.
I saw that one. Yep.
Eric saw that one. She stepped like way out into the roadway with the sign. There was no place, like the peloton, if you're riding in the big group of riders, you're taking up the entire roadway. There was no place for this guy to try and squeeze over to avoid her. Plowed right through her, caused a huge crash. That woman went into hiding, but was eventually found and penalized somehow. I don't know exactly how.
He was charged with something.
Yeah, so hopefully they find this guy too, because like it drives me nuts when fans are crowding in on the bike riders, and it feels like every year they get more and more aggressive with how much they crowd the riders, how long they wait to step out of the way as riders are approaching them, waving flags right in front of them and pulling it out at the very last second.
Like a fighter.
It just drives me nuts. Like you could have the most devastating impact on this race. These are guys that I don't think that anybody can truly appreciate how incredibly talented these riders are. Like I look at when I ride on my Peloton bike, I look at my output, like my average wattage over the course of, say, a 60-minute ride, where I feel like I'm putting in quite a bit of effort. And if I can get like 60 or 70% of the average output that these riders are putting out over the course of 4 to 5 hours every day for basically a month, 21 days out of 23, they get 2 rest days over the course of the Tour de France. These guys are putting up wattages at least 30% higher than I can manage on one really good 60-minute bike ride, where I know that I'm not going to be putting in like a hard workout the next day. I'm going to do something to recover the next day. And I'm a pretty good endurance athlete. I'm not in the shape I was in high school.
Wait a minute now.
But I'm a pretty good endurance athlete.
This is utterly ridiculous.
And these guys make me look like an amateur.
What are you talking about? I'm a pretty good endurance athlete. I'm sorry, Mr. Hall of Famer across the street. Just a pretty good endurance athlete. What does that even mean?
Across the street, like here.
You make my point even more so, though. They make me look like an amateur. They make me look like just Joe Schmo out here.
Well, yeah.
Well,
That's
aren't
what
they
They make me look like the 4 guys named Joe that were supporting LeBron James in Cleveland when you had the Ash Backwards podcast in Miami.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
I am so terrible at sports compared to these athletes.
Well, yeah. That's why you're
Like,
sitting
they're
here.
professionals.
Like,
And they're
they-
there. Like,
Yeah.
And these fans have the potential to have massive impacts, to take a person completely out of the tour. I mean, when
hurt somebody.
when you crash, especially when you're going fast, but even if you're not going fast, it hurts.
Use the word crash. So
You
yeah.
get, like, people are riding bloody. Like, Sepp Kuss had, like, bandages over his arm, and there was a huge gash in his leg, and he's still riding in that stage after he went down. His teammate was not so lucky. Nathan Van Hooydonk had to abandon because he was, I believe he was the one who actually, I think Sepp Kuss was hit by the fan, but then took out Van Hooydonk, who got the worst of it. He managed to come back to the peloton, but was dropped on the first climb of the day. While Poles wound up winning the stage. It was his first stage victory in 10 years of riding the tour. Pogacar and Vingegaard raced each other up the final climb, and I was just getting rather frustrated with Vingegaard's tactics over the last 2 days in the Alps because, the day before, as I mentioned, he caught up to Pogacar after Pogacar's attack, and then for some reason got in front of Pogacar but didn't try and lay down an attack of his own. He just kept looking over his shoulder, getting paranoid about when Pogacar was going to try and take off. So then on this last day in the Alps, the third place rider in the Tour, Rodriguez, caught up to them. Vingegaard got on his wheel, but Rodriguez kind of shut down his attack. He didn't really attack them. He just got in front. And so Vingegaard maybe thought that he was going to go, but then he ended up just getting right in front of Pogacar, and Pogacar was able to sit on his wheel. So once again, he's like looking over his shoulder constantly, which impacts your own momentum trying to get up the mountain. So eventually Pogacar did attack. Vingegaard did a pretty good job to counter it. He looked a lot more explosive on Sunday than I've really seen him at any point in his career so far in the Tour de France. So he was able to stay right on Pogacar to the finish, kept all 10 seconds of his lead. And so at that point I'm thinking at some point he's going to need to try and put Pogacar under pressure. Like, he's going to have to attack him because if you're just going to let Pogacar keep, whittling down a second here, a second there, it's going to be really hard to defend that yellow jersey all the way to Paris. So they got yesterday off, and then this morning, the one-time trial of the Tour, and over the past couple weeks I've mentioned I'm not a real big fan of time trials in the Tour de France. Today was a pretty exciting time trial, I must say. There were a couple pretty good performances in the early going. One guy, and I can't remember his name, I know his last name started with a C. He had the fastest time on the course for well more than an hour until somebody finally took it from him. But the last 2 riders of the day, because they started in reverse order of the current standings of the Tour de France. So Tadej Pogacar was the second to last rider. Jonas Vingegaard was the last rider of the day. They separate everybody by 2 minutes. So you one person starts, 2 minutes later the next person starts, and so on. Mm-hmm. So Rodriguez, third place in the Tour, starts 2 minutes ahead of Tadej Pogacar. Tadej Pogacar, when he crossed the finish line, had the fastest time of the day. He had almost caught his 2-minute man. That's Rodriguez. Mm-hmm. He made up almost the entire 2 minutes that Rodriguez had started in front of him. And then 20 seconds after Tadej Pogacar finished, Jonas Vingegaard finishes. He made up a minute and 40 seconds on Tadej Pogacar. That means that he now leads the Tour de France by a minute and 50 seconds. Went from leading by 10 seconds after stage 15 to leading by a minute and, I guess technically a minute and 48 seconds after stage 16 because he put in that incredible of an effort on his individual time trial. It was one of the most impressive individual efforts I've seen in the Tour de France since I've watched it. So just absolutely mind-boggling that he could do that well on this stage. So just an incredible yellow jersey defense by Vingegaard. I'm really excited for these last handful of stages, 5 stages to go. I think we have actually the high point of the literal altitude-wise high point of the Tour de France is going to be on tomorrow's stage. They're going to have a lot of serious climbs tomorrow. They'll also have a mountain stage on the penultimate day on Saturday. They do have a fairly flat stage and a moderately hilly stage in between. And then Sunday, Paris, Champs-Élysées finish. We're getting right down to it. And right now it is Jonas Vingegaard's to lose. So that is where we stand on the Tour de France. We can go ahead and move on to some other stuff. Let's talk a little bit of Wimbledon. Eric, I don't know how much you watched after the first few rounds. Did you catch the final match?
I saw most of it. I was kind of in and out. I was flipping back between that and the Orioles game. But I saw the 5th set, which is obviously
That's the
most important part.
Yeah. So Carlos Alcaraz won Wimbledon. He lost the 1st and 4th sets, 1-6 and 3-6 to Novak Djokovic. Won the 2nd set on a tie break. Then got his own 6-1 win in the 3rd set, and ultimately took the match in the 5th set 6-4.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when he fell behind in the first set, and then he goes to a tie break, I'm thinking, okay, this is curtains. Like, people throw up all over themselves every time they get into a tie break with Djokovic. It's inexplicable how people just refuse to beat him, right? Like, he's one of those guys who they refuse to go out there and just keep their level for an extended period to beat him. But he did that in the tiebreaker. That was kind of a moment where I was like, wow, this guy might have a shot to pull this off. Then he rolls Djokovic in the 3rd set, which is classic. You know, if you've ever watched Djokovic play, anytime his level drops, he coasts. And he just says, I'm not playing tennis until it's time for the next set. I quit on this set. This guy's going to, basically punch himself out. I'm going to sit on the ropes because he can't actually knock me out. Like in boxing, he can't actually win the match here. So I'm going to make him exert himself where I'm going to just chill until it's time for me to try to win again. Which is exactly what he did. And then he turns around and he wins the 4th set, which is the same thing he's done his whole career. And then it comes down to the 5th set, and Alcaraz gets a break. I think he had to hold serve 3 times in a row in order to close out the championship. In the last game, he got a little bit of a break from Djokovic where he just sprayed a routine return, hit it long on the baseline, and that was kind of it. I was like, okay, well, if Djokovic is going to be giving away points, he's going to lose, right? Because Alcaraz was outplaying him pretty much the entire match. Djokovic relies on the guy, again, breaking himself down. If Djokovic is the guy that's going to be making errors, he can't win. Like, he can't actually out-physical a 20-year-old. We talked about this a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was last week, where these guys should be kicking this guy's ass up and down the court, all surfaces. There's no excuse for a 36-year-old to be dominating a bunch of 21-year-olds in tennis. That just shouldn't be happening at this point. But because the younger generation for 3 in a row now hasn't either had the mental toughness or the consistency or the dedication to actually, round out their games to be able to beat him, he and Nadal and to an extent Roger Federer have been able to stay at the top of the game almost into their 40s, which is preposterous. And now it seems like Alcaraz, I saw him, I think he won the U.S. Open, or may have been a runner-up, I can't remember, but he beat Tiafoe in the semifinals last year in the U.S. Open. He looked great, and I was like, this guy's got the talent. Can he actually put it together? He definitely put it together during the fortnight.
So real exciting Wimbledon. I know that the women's side was straight sets. It was like a 6-4, 6-4 win. I forget the name of the woman who won. Right now, it's just it feels like sort of a black hole on the women's side of tennis. There's not really a whole lot of super
There's no Serena
consistent or super exciting players with Serena gone and after Coco Gauff got knocked out early, and Naomi Osaka is not playing right now. She's pregnant.
Congrats to her.
Yeah. So, all right, let's talk a little bit of baseball. Start with my Yankees. The Yankees are 50-45. Not too shabby. 5 games above 500. Oh, but fifth place, dead last in the American League East. Mm-hmm. And they're 3-7 in their last 10. So that's not great, especially considering we've had quite a few cupcake teams on our schedule recently, both going into and coming out of the All-Star break. That includes a series loss that I predicted last week on this podcast to Colorado. I said we're probably going to lose that series because Colorado is absolutely horrible, and the Yankees are just absolutely making it their mission to lose to horrible teams. So they lost 2 of 3 to Colorado. They lost yesterday to open the series in Anaheim. After this series, they'll get a chance to try and reset because they get 3 rest days over the course of the next 8 days. They have a 3-game series Friday through Sunday. They have a 2-game series on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, but they have this Thursday, next Monday, and next Thursday off. Yeah, a lot of off days. I'm not used to seeing that on anybody's schedule, much less the Yankees. So hopefully they make good use of that. Hopefully that actually allows them to reset because they certainly seem to need it. By the way, Sunday, 7-8 loss to the Rockies. Yesterday, 3-4 loss to the Angels. It was the first time since 1992 that the Yankees lost back-to-back games where they were leading by multiple runs in or after the 7th inning in both games.
Okay. I mean, sounds like y'all are choking then.
Yeah.
You know, what's going
we
on?
choked badly the last 2 days. Josh Johnson's season may be over. He was placed on the IL with a high-grade right calf strain. So, it sucks. We're going to lose his 143 batting average.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that sounds like addition by subtraction.
Yeah. And then one thing that struck me as a little bit surprising on kind of a lighter note. So in Sunday's loss to the Rockies, Garrett Cole set the franchise record for double-digit strikeout games. It was his 24th game as a Yankee with at least 10 strikeouts. This surprised me a little bit. Do you know how many starts he has made as a Yankee?
It's been
50. I don't know.
He's been with the Yankees. This is his 4th season in New York.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't feel like it's already.
Well,
his
because
fourth,
he was
but
there for the fake season.
Yes.
So
he has made 95 starts.
I was going to guess close to 100.
He's close to 100. He's at 95 starts as a Yankee. Here are some pitchers who have made more starts than that for the Yankees in history. Okay, I'm going to go up the ladder. David Cone had some seasons with a lot of strikeouts. 169 starts for the Yankees.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Roger Clemens, 174 starts for the Yankees.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Mussina, 248 starts for the Yankees.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, certainly.
There's a reason that Yankees fans think pretty highly of Mike Mussina.
Well, they should. He was good.
But not
He's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, but think highly of him as one of their own. They think
One of their own. He played on the Yankees.
He only made 40 more starts for the Orioles than he did the Yankees in his career.
Well, he was also better for the Orioles than he was for the Yankees.
CC Sabathia, 306 starts for the Yankees. Whitey Ford, 438 starts for the Yankees. Andy Pettitte, 438 starts also for the Yankees. Now, I get that baseball's a little bit different today. Generally higher strikeout rates. Players don't put quite the same emphasis on putting the ball in play that maybe they did in the 90s. But, still, he's made half as many starts as some of these guys, a quarter of as many as some of these guys, and he has more double-digit strikeout games than any of them in Yankees history. It just kind of shocked me a little bit. That stood out to me.
Well, he's always been a strikeout guy. The only guy on that list that you really named that was an elite K's guy was Roger Clemens, and while he was still great with the Yankees, that was not his prime.
Right, his prime was in Boston.
Yeah, he was not he was still great, but he wasn't Boston Roger Clemens. He wasn't even that one weird year in Toronto Roger Clemens where he was just blowing fools away. But
But still, I feel like it's just weird. Like I don't feel like you have to be an elite strikeout guy
to get 10,
to get 24 of those games
get 10?
over the course of 438 starts.
10K's a lot. 10Ks is a lot. It's a lot of Ks.
And you also have to consider that, like, especially back when like Whitey Ford was playing, pitchers tended to go deeper into games. Even when Pettit was playing, pitchers usually went 7 or 8 innings.
Pettit wasn't a strikeout pitcher.
No, but still, like, come on. There had to have been a few games like that.
For Pete's sake.
Anyway, let's go ahead and move on to almost the other end of the spectrum. Not first place in the division, but second place in the division, the Baltimore Orioles.
First place in the loss column. I will say that.
Fewest lost in the American League.
That's true.
Facts.
You still got to make up a few games on the Rays. So.
Well, yeah.
A game.
Well, we got to play more games than them because they've got, for some reason...
Wait, so you guys are tied in the win column?
No.
No. We have one fewer loss and 3 fewer wins.
Yeah. They've played like 4 more games.
Yeah, so you have to make up 4 games on them. What I meant when I said
to
that you
play
have to
a
make
bunch
up
of games,
is
yeah.
you have to play more games than they have to play the rest of the way.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, they play indoors, so...
That's true.
Okay.
Well, they don't get rainouts, so that's, Anyway, the Orioles are currently losing. I think it's 5-1 before I lost all contact with the outside world. But yeah, the Orioles lost yesterday, snapped their 8-game winning streak, and of course, if you don't get to 9 games, Orioles Twitter freaks out and starts just going nuts. Everybody's hating on everybody. Everybody sucks, and this team's terrible, and this, that, and the other.
You were giving me some of those vibes yesterday.
Well, I was furious at them that night, but I wasn't out here saying trade the whole team.
You were like, I'm done with this team.
I was done for the night. I'm turning the TV off now. Like, just ridiculous, and now you're getting me heated, and I'm going to end up having to have a bleep here if you keep going that far. But anyway, that last night was brutal. That was just a top-to-bottom team loss where they should have won the game, and they let it get away because they did dumb stuff. Aaron Hicks, your boy, decided not to catch a fly ball in center field. He decided to jump when he didn't need to.
Oh, so he's finally doing for you what he was doing for us.
Utterly clanked it.
New York Yankees Aaron Hicks has officially arrived to Baltimore. So he clanked it to start the 6th inning. There's a hit and a walk or something like that. Then Brian Baker comes into the game and gets the first 2 guys out, and then gets 0-2 on Jason Hayward. Fails to get him out, ends up walking him. Gets 0-2 on Chris Taylor, who they made sure to point out that Chris Taylor on 0-2 counts is batting .080 on the season. And Baker decides to continue to attack him with fastballs even though he's sitting on it. And sure enough, eventually Chris Taylor hits a grand slam to flip the score from the Orioles up 4-2 to the Orioles down 6-4. And that was pretty much all she wrote. Yeah. But, before that, 8-game winning streak. Woo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's that.
Yeah, still in second place, still, in position to threaten the Rays at least. They've got a big series coming up with them later this week, 4-game series, so that could end up deciding a little bit of something in the American League East. And the Rays promptly blew their game against the Rangers yesterday, lost on a walk-off wild pitch, so the Orioles didn't lose any ground.
So, Evan, talk about Grayson Rodriguez, because he was called back up for last night's game. How did he look?
He looked dominant at times. Like his whole time with the Orioles this season, he's shown flashes of just being incredible, and then, sometimes it just falls apart. He waited till the 6th inning last night to fall apart instead of starting off falling apart and then putting it together later in the game. He went through a stretch there where he always walked the first batter of the first inning just right away. Put him on, like he's DL Hall or something. So, it was good to see that. Obviously he's got a lot of work to do to sort of tighten it up a little bit, get through 6 innings. But I guess it's encouraging to see that he's doing a little better. Now, if his teammate Baker could have picked him up, maybe just some, right? Not just come in and give up bombs to some guy batting .080 on 0-2 pitches. Or, I think Taylor's batting like 200 and like 220 or something like that.
Overall?
Overall, yeah. He's not good.
Still not good.
He's been really bad, yeah.
Like you expect, your average on 0-2 pitches to be pretty bad,
Yeah,
but
of
like,
course. Like they made a point to suggest that it was like the worst in the league. That he was that bad. Like 080 is garbage. Like in any count, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like he's like Chris Taylor does one thing: he swings for the fence, right? And that's what he was doing on all these fastballs, and Baker kept throwing them in the same spot. And eventually, one of them flew over the center field wall. So
now let me ask you: was he like shaking off some calls from the catcher?
no, I blame Adley for it as well. I blame whoever's responsible for calling the game, which I believe should be the catcher. But,
Usually it is.
But the pitcher also has agency there to shake off calls. And the pitching coach at some point needs to say, hey, throw an off-speed pitch in there somewhere. The guy's going to swing and miss it. That's what he does all the time. So there's plenty of blame to go around. And from what I saw from Grayson, he looked demonstrably better than he had before. This wasn't a minor improvement. This was a big stride. Like, he wasn't out there pitching like an ace. I would give him a game. I would give his outing a B, but I would have given most of his outings either a D or an F before, right? Like his command of his fastball was much better. He looked like he was pitching with more of a purpose. I mean, you're facing the Dodgers. The Dodgers are really good.
You're facing the Dodgers, and you're a young pitcher, and typically young pitchers do have a harder time getting deeper into games because they're facing the same guys multiple times. And we all know that no matter who you are, your batting average against tends to go up as you get into the third time through a lineup, but that's even more so for younger pitchers. So, the fact that he is, as Evan put it, he played really well early and then fell apart as opposed to falling apart at the start and then trying to piece it back together. Problem is, if you fall apart at the start, sometimes you don't even get the opportunity to piece it back together because you're having such a bad day that they just yank you. In this case, if you can give 5 good innings, and you can do that consistently, you'll take that. Even if you're starting to like consistently fall apart in the 6th, the coach can just be like, okay, well, then we'll let you pitch for 5 innings, and then we'll go to the bullpen.
But you don't want to go to the Orioles bullpen.
It should be stated that, again, the Dodgers are notorious for working counts, so they do get your pitch count up. The plate umpire yesterday was calling a very tight zone. Like, he was giving pretty much nothing off the corners. Like, it was unusually tight. He was consistent, so I'm not hating on him, but like in normal circumstances, he would have had quicker outs. And then you had multiple plays where the defense let him down. Like the start of what happened in the 6th inning was because Hicks couldn't catch a ball that he should have caught, and then Grayson gave him another hit, he gave him a walk, and that's how you end up in that situation. But he gave up 2 runs before he left the game. Baker gave up the other 2 that were on his record because of the grand slam. And again, it would have been nice if he had just had a little bit more help from the defense, the bullpen, everybody involved. Like I said, it was a complete team failure.
So Cedric Mullins came back briefly to the lineup after the All-Star break, and then immediately is out again with quadriceps tightness.
He's not on the injured list.
Right. Like
it seems to be day to day. Yeah.
Aren't we all day to day?
Sure.
Week to week, like Lamar Jackson.
Goodness
just means he's done.
What is your guys' take on voting Colton Cowser off the island? Because it seems like a lot of Orioles Twitter wants that to happen.
Orioles Twitter aren't exactly the brightest bunch.
You get all kinds. So
yeah.
You get the more intelligent, reasonable, patient ones are saying it's been 8 games. Like, what are you talking about? It's moronic. It doesn't make any sense. They did the same thing when Adley got called up last year.
Yeah.
He struggled at the plate because that's what happens. Rookies, they take a little bit of time to acclimate to Major League pitching. He was bad to start his career. Gunnar was good to start when he got called up in August, but to start this year on opening day, basically for the first month of the year, he was awful at the plate. And
I feel like a lot of times players who get called up mid-season tend to have a little bit more success at the plate immediately because they've already kind of gotten their swing figured out over the course of their minor league season. Whereas if you start the season at the MLB level, you might take a little longer to kind of warm up into things if you're a younger player.
It's possible, but there's also a consideration for the way that Cowser has performed at every level. Every time he got called up, there was an initial struggle, and then he got going and never looked back. So that it happened when he got called up to Bowie. It happened when he got called up to Norfolk last year. Then this year he crushed AAA pitching the entire season, and they called him up just a couple weeks ago, and he struggled a bit. He's still getting on base at a decent clip. He's still drawing walks. So the hitter's eye is there. It's a matter of getting the timing down and getting the confidence up to hitting Major League pitching. But it's not like he's out there flailing at stuff in the dirt and doing the stuff that makes you think this guy's never going to figure it out. He deserves a little bit of time to figure things out. And again, it's not like he's replacing anybody that you would really say could help the team. The alternative, especially with Mullins currently dinged up a little bit, is Ryan McKenna, who's a bum.
Oh.
Right? That's it. That's your extra outfielder that you have to call up in AAA.
No.
That's not an option.
You mean the guy who dropped the game by himself on the second day of the season?
It is not an option to...
Ruining a great day at Hershey Park?
A top 13 or 14 prospect in baseball is being sat for a proven bum in Ryan McKenna because he's off to a slow start in his career. It would be like pulling your rookie quarterback after a half. That's how much a baseball season is for a football. It's 8 games is like a half of football in the NFL. If C.J. Stroud goes out there and throws 2 picks in the first half of his first game, they say, get him out of here. Put Tom Savage in.
Yeah, send him back to Ohio State.
It's insane. There's got to be and again, Jordan Westbrook started off well. He's cooled off because he's a rookie. These guys need a little bit of time to figure things out, and
he also needs time on the field.
And I think people are like, oh, but we're trying to win now. I'm like, man, this is part of the process. Part of the reason you are able to say we're trying to win is because you gave some time to your young players. Ramon Arias didn't get you into this position. Neither did Jorge Mateo. Neither did Brian McKenna. So, the results of patience and giving these guys time to figure it out has bared fruit. There's no reason to deviate from that right now.
Jackson Holliday, Orioles prospect, number 1 prospect in all of baseball, who I got to see when he was playing for the Shorebirds in Delmarva.
Danny Ocean.
He has been called up now 2 levels since then. He's in Bowie now with the Bay Sox and playing pretty well.
Yeah, he started off hot. I think he was 6 for his first 11 as a Bay Sox. So maybe
Not too shabby.
Maybe the rules of gotta give him some time to acclimate don't apply to him. Maybe he's just special. I did appreciate his quote where he said, I'm a AA now, and somebody kind of and he was being very chill about where he was, and they asked him, it's what are your chances of getting up to the show before the end of the season? And he was like, I wouldn't put it past me. And I'm like, all right. I like the confidence. Go. Yeah, sure.
I like that. It's a little bit of confidence, but it's not cocky.
But everything else he said before that indicated that wouldn't have been his response. He would be like, I'm just going to take it one day at a time. Typical cliche stuff. Once you suggested, what about the show? Oh, yeah, I'm going to try to get there. Yeah,
I also like the way he phrased it, I wouldn't put it past me. Almost like he might just accidentally stumble into getting up to the show.
Or he's just like, that wouldn't count me out. I'm that dude, Things happen like that for me because I'm awesome.
It's quietly confident.
I appreciate it. Yeah,
I can definitely appreciate it.
It's good stuff. Yeah,
and it's not unprecedented because Manny Machado got called up straight from AA. He skipped AAA entirely.
Yep.
Yeah. So
shout out to Kobe Mayo who got called up to AAA.
Yeah. So the Yankees-Orioles game on July 30th got flexed into Sunday Night Baseball. So I gotta take a look at my schedule that day because I know I have something already planned.
I thought you said you couldn't come.
Well, so Rashawn and I have a food tour that day, but it might be early enough that we could do that. I don't know. I gotta talk to her and see.
I should have bought the tickets already. I've been procrastinating buying the tickets because I thought you weren't coming.
Well, I don't know if I will or not. I'm just saying, that gives me a chance. That gives me a chance.
The game is going to sell out.
Okay. Well, then we'll get your... If you think I'm not coming, why aren't you just buying your tickets?
Because
don't worry
I've been
about
lazy.
me. Don't worry about me. If I go, I'm probably going to go with Rashonda, honestly, anyway.
You don't want to sit next to us. We'll be whining about our team the whole time.
Because she had been thinking about getting me tickets to that game to go with her for our anniversary, for my anniversary presents. But then because we have the food tour, I was thinking about maybe a different game.
Mm-hmm. All right, well,
in any case,
figure it out.
I think the one other topic that we wanted to discuss tonight on baseball is Shohei Brotani. I don't know who put that in the notes.
Of course, that was me.
Of course, it was
Why
Eric.
Why would that be him? Come on.
Shohei Ohtani is officially on the trading block. August 1st is the trade deadline for Major League Baseball this year. A lot of teams that are either solidly in the sweepstakes or are rumored to be in the sweepstakes or are rumored not to be in the sweepstakes, even though they probably should be. I'm just going to say that I don't think it makes a lot of sense for the Yankees to get in on it. I would love to have Shohei with the Yankees, but where are we going to put him in the outfield? Like if we're going to, he'll be the designated hitter when he's pitching. But and I guess we could just make him the designated hitter the whole time. But we already have so many players, including people who are vying to be. And I'm not
so
saying
you think Stanton's going to stay healthy the rest of the year? He's going to play all the games. Keep running him out there.
We're also probably not going to be able to re-sign him at the end of the year if we're going to actually try and keep our budget in check.
This isn't the 27 rings attitude right here. Okay,
well, but Hal Steinbrenner's running the show, not Pops.
Right.
Pops is gone, so I from the Yankees' perspective,
Hal Steinbrenner also has not done a very good job of bringing in high-profile talent. If you look at
Garrett Cole would like a word.
If you look at most of George Steinbrenner's tenure, if you look at some of the biggest names that the Yankees went and got either in free agency or through trades, the Yankees almost always won a World Series within a year or two of getting that player.
Well,
that has not been the case with
4
Hal.
out of 5.
What's that?
That's because they won 4 out of 5. Of course, you get a bunch of guys and you get more guys. If you're winning all the World Series, of course that's the case. But that was a once-in-a-lifetime window where you won 4 out of 5 World Series. That doesn't really exist anymore.
Sure, but the point is we haven't really been going out and getting a big-name guy like that, not recently. So I would be surprised if the Yankees are really in it. What are your guys' thoughts on the Orioles?
Well,
I want to start with the Orioles.
Oh, well, quick comment on the Yankees, and they're in last place, and I know that's weird. That because they're 50-45, that's not a last place record, but that's the reality of where they are. So getting Ohtani, does that elevate them to being able to win the division? I don't think so. Not
to win the division at this point. I think we're too far behind the Orioles and the Rays, but we're right in the wild card race.
Sure, but then
while we may not be good enough to make up the ground that we've lost so far to win the division, it might put us in a position where we can compete in the playoffs against teams like the Orioles and the Rays.
I realize that Ohtani's 2 guys instead of 1, but the Yankees lineup stinks. Y'all can't hit.
Yeah, it's
and
not very good.
He's not.
I don't know how much he would realistically elevate us.
My concern,
I'm not gonna say he's not gonna elevate us.
Oh, he's obviously gonna make you better because he's great. But my concern with Shohei for anybody, but I guess from the perspective of the Orioles is the Orioles need pitching, and he hasn't really pitched lately. He's got this blister on his finger. It's resulted in multiple shortened starts or ineffective starts.
Yeah.
If that looms and continues to be a problem, then the main asset that he will provide that the Orioles really need, which is a top of the line pitcher, if he's not able to do that, then it's not worth it for the Orioles to hand over a haul of prospects for 2 months of one great bat and another mediocre or non-existent pitcher. But if he is able to make starts, that changes the equation.
I would imagine eventually the blister is going to work itself out and he'll be pitching at the level that he was earlier this season again.
You would hope so. But for the Orioles, I don't think I just don't see it as realistic because they seem to be pretty conservative with giving up these prospects.
Well, they're definitely conservative on that side of things, and so however much sense it would make for the Orioles to go after him, I think that it would be very surprising if they did.
I don't know if the Orioles would be willing to give up the high-level prospect. The Angels
probably have to give up a Jackson Holiday.
Yeah, the Angels would ask for Jackson Holiday, and I think Elias would tell him no way. And that would probably be the end of the conversations because they're not going to be interested in. The Orioles have plenty of mid top 100 prospects that a lot of teams would be happy to have, but for Shohei Ohtani, the Angels are going to want the guy, and they're not getting the guy.
So, what are a few teams that would make sense where Shohei would elevate them enough that it makes sense for them to grab him for the stretch run in the playoffs, and where maybe they have enough, capital in prospects or whatever, to make it work?
I think I look at it from a perspective of who's the most desperate, right? Like, who really needs to go for it this year. And, it's teams like, honestly, it's teams like the Dodgers.
I was going to ask if you think
the
the
Dodgers
because
they feel like their window is kind of moving towards closer to being closed.
Right. It feels weird to refer to the Dodgers as desperate because they've been so dominant for the past 5 years or so. But, well, longer than that, yes. But, as you said, the window is closing, and the fact that they are not the same dominant team this year that they have been in recent memory, like, are the Diamondbacks still leading that division?
No, they've taken.
The Dodgers
they're back.
The Dodgers have taken it over, but it took them a while to do so. They've definitely been a little bit underwhelming compared to what we normally would expect them to be.
And the thing is, they could use Ohtani desperately need him for both of what he offers as a power hitter and as a pitcher, because their pitching has been unusually not as effective, right? Like, Clayton Kershaw has been their best pitcher this year, which
he's not.
He's like 38
which
years old, right?
10 years ago, Clayton Kershaw was everybody's best pitcher.
Right.
But like right now, and credit to Kershaw for still being great at his age, but that's not a guy you want to be your ace in the postseason. We've already talked about Kershaw's struggles even when he was in his prime.
Yeah.
Now asking him to go out there and be your game one starter at 36 with a history of back injuries and all kinds of issues that he's had recently, that's not something they want. They would want Ohtani to really bolster that rotation while also providing that bat. Because, they lost Trey Turner as a hitter. They could definitely use somebody else in that lineup to add some more punch. And I think if they added him, they could really threaten the Braves in the National League. But without him, the Braves are the heavy favorites to come out of the National League and win that pennant. So, that could be a team. I also, interestingly, apparently the Rockies are super interested in adding him, which makes absolutely no sense.
None.
But if they want to go ahead and waste their prospects for a guy who's going to leave in 2 months, why? So he can hit bigger bombs at Coors Field? Is that the idea?
They figure put some butts in the seats for a couple months.
Yeah, or like Bob Nightingale tweeted yesterday after Ohtani hit the game-tying homer, like, what in the world are the Angels thinking, even considering trading this guy? I'm like, he's going to leave in 2 months and they suck. Like, what? Like, what, they're going to keep him just because, hey, it's fun?
Right.
Like, you're trying to win ball games here. You're not going to... The fans aren't going to be thinking, yeah, or we still need to rebuild, and our team's been in the toilet for 10 years and has no hope of getting better. But those last 2 months of Ohtani were totally worth it. They were so much fun.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man.
One thing that I wouldn't put it past the Padres or the Mets to do something crazy and trade for this guy.
But what do they have to offer? They've like the Padres. They cashed in on their farm system way too early to go for it when they signed Machado. When they obviously when Tatis came up, when they traded Soto.
Juan Soto, yep.
So that's been a big thing that they did was they just said, all right, well, we're going for it right now. And
so I can't imagine that they have a lot left
what's
to
left?
offer.
But you mentioned desperation, right?
Sure.
Well,
desperate.
but the
enough,
Angels have to
but they
accept
also
the
have to
trade.
have the means to get the Angels' attention.
The Angels traded for Dylan Bundy.
That's true. They gave us Kyle Bradish, who's been great.
That's
a fleece job.
All right, well, in that case, let's Josh Donaldson for Shohei. Here we go.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't put it. I have a hard time predicting where he's going to go.
It's really tough. It's just because
it could be. I mean, to be honest,
can't say yes if you don't ask.
Yeah,
that's true. But the fact that
2019 should be interested, right? He's going to improve your club wherever he goes. But realistically, it's a much shorter list.
Yeah, and the wild card is the fact that he's only got 2 months of team control. Normally, guys, when they go on the market, they usually have this year plus the next year to kind of add that extra bit of value that makes people say, okay, I'll give up, a bunch of top prospects for this. But for 2 months, it's like you're basically saying we have to win right now. And a lot of the teams with the high-level prospects aren't interested in dumping them all for
2 months.
For 2 months of chasing a pennant. Like, that's just not realistic.
What about Tampa Bay?
Have they ever done anything?
No, they're
like
cheap.
They're cheap and they love their prospects,
they're
right?
notoriously cheap and they love their prospects.
I mean,
Are you allowed? Because I don't know the MLB rules in terms of like mid-season contract negotiations. Would a team be allowed to trade for him and immediately sign him to an extension?
I think so.
I don't see why they wouldn't be able to, but you would obviously have to have that assurance before you made the trade. Which
Right.
I don't think
And I don't
Otani's
know
going
if-
to be interested in doing that because he's
Right.
probably going to want your
He wants
value.
three-quarters
of a
Your
billion
dollar
dollars.
value goes up. You know,
When you
later
actually
in the game.
experience free
when,
agency.
Yeah, when you're in the
Yeah.
open market. So
Yeah,
he's
no.
not going to be interested in doing that.
All right, so very quickly, yes or no, does Ohtani get traded by the August 1st deadline, Eric?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
No
Evan
question.
says yes. I'm taking no on that.
No.
You think they're going to hold him? Okay.
I don't think that they're going to hold him willingly. I think that nobody's going to put an offer on the table that's going to be enough for the Angels to be willing to accept it, and so
Well,
they're
that's
just going to
foolish
swallow
out of
the loss.
them.
Probably
Get
probably
something
yes.
or nothing.
Probably yes.
2 months of fun,
but-
though. 2
Yeah.
months of fun.
You get.
So
Would you choose something or would you choose nothing?
we'll see. If it does happen, I think it's going to be just on August 1st, whatever the best offer that's available is, they'll take
oh,
it.
yeah.
That's what I'm thinking as well.
But that's I'm still leaning on the no.
So
we'll see.
A follow-up question to that is, assuming Ohtani gets traded, or if your theory is correct that he doesn't get traded, he's obviously not going to stay with Anaheim after this year. They're not going to re-sign him.
I highly doubt it.
Because he's not going to want to stay with a team that's not winning anything. What do you do with Mike Trout? Right, because he's under contract for an eternity.
Yeah.
But
him too.
he's still, when he's healthy, he's still a stud. He's a guy that we've said for a decade now deserves a chance to actually compete in the postseason. What does he say? Because he probably had to figure with Ohtani around, they would have a shot, and they never did. If he leaves, they definitely don't have a shot. He might want to get out of there too.
You should trade
the,
him
the
too.
problem is that they have all the control on him, and whatever rebuild they're going to do, they're probably going to want to try and still have him around to mentor younger players as they come
crazy.
in.
That's
I would
crazy.
think at that point, you've got a player whoever he goes to is going to have several years of team control. You can probably get more for him. You can probably get more for Mike Trout than you can get for Ohtani today. Based
Trout
on the
signed
amount
for
of
like
team
5
control,
more years.
based on the amount of team control
Yeah.
that each of that the receiving team would have over that player. So it would be smart for them to move him. It would also be the right thing to do, just from a human standpoint, in my opinion, like to do right by Mike Trout. Let him go somewhere where he can try and win something and have some team success in addition to his individual success before his prime is over, because eventually his prime is going to end. Like, he's been doing this for quite a while now.
Yeah,
Came up in 2012, didn't he?
Yeah, and he's
been doing this for more than a decade now.
and he's got injury history. At
Yeah,
this point, especially
and
the last few
and his
years.
injury history is piling up. It's
Yeah.
getting worse pretty much every year.
Isn't he hurt now?
Yes.
He's a broken. What do they call it?
Hamate bone.
Yeah, hamate. But I was gonna call it a ham bone. But I was like, I don't think that's right.
Ham bone.
But yeah. So he's out for the time being, and that's a big part of the reason why the Angels have spiraled, because he was starting to get it going, and he and Ohtani were carrying that team to potentially a wild card spot. But that's
Now
not
it's
happening.
looking like that's not going to happen.
Well,
So,
considering the
5.5 out.
considering
of the
he's
wild
hurt
card.
and they may trade Ohtani and
They should
And they're
just
the
trade both of
Angels.
them.
yeah,
They're
the
the frickin'
Angels.
Angels.
They're the Angels.
Rendon is there to mentor the young guys,
So
right?
you can teach him how to do lefty face mushes when he's got a broken hand.
Yeah,
Oh my god, what an idiot!
all right. Let's get to the NFL. It's been a while since we've talked NFL on this podcast. Had a long dead period, and for once
It's
there really wasn't a
continuing.
lot of off-season shenanigans to get the NFL back in the news. Usually, it feels like something comes out in the off-season just to make sure that the NFL doesn't completely leave our attention. But Evan, rookies reported to training camp for the Ravens. Any reaction to that? You excited?
No, I'm not excited. It's
Not excited
becoming
about
the
Zay
time of the.
Flowers?
It's becoming the time of the year where the football season can end before it starts, just by my phone buzzing. Okay, I'm just gonna be on edge until the first game kicks off. Okay, it's a miserable time.
Yeah. So Eric and I discussed our Hall of Fame entrance for our fantasy football league this past weekend, so we've got that squared away.
Fantasy league has a Hall of Fame.
I'm starting my my preparation, my research for this year's fantasy season, so I'm getting really excited for football. But the main reason that we want to talk NFL today is because there actually is kind of a big thing in the news right now regarding football. And that is the passing of the deadline to re-sign or to extend players who had been put on a franchise tag. So, following last season, 6 players across the NFL were placed on some version of the franchise tag. Lamar Jackson was placed on the franchise tag. He got the transition tag, I believe, from the Ravens. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, they finally worked out a deal. We got to talk about that very quickly because we had our draft day podcast, and it happened
I was here
on draft day. Yes, the last time we were on campus doing this show. Evan Ingram signed or was put on a franchise tag by the Jaguars. He signed an extension. Deron Payne, Washington Commanders, put on the franchise tag, signed an extension this offseason. The other 3 players, let's see if we can figure out the common denominator between them. Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard. Yeah. All running backs.
Oh, I was going to guess something else. I'm kidding. I knew. I read the sheet. I've seen all the tweets.
Yes,
I get it.
Okay.
I'm in the loop, okay? I was kidding.
So the 3 running backs, the only 3, none of those other guys are running backs. Even as much as some of the media would like to categorize Lamar Jackson as one, none of those other 3 are running backs.
That's a running back.
Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard placed on the franchise tag by the Giants, the Oakland or Las Vegas Raiders. Good Lord, I'm dating myself here, and the Dallas Cowboys, respectively. All of them placed on the franchise tag. None of them signed extensions, and the deadline to get an extension done, I believe, was Sunday, or was it yesterday?
I don't know.
I think it was Sunday, but it may have been yesterday. Regardless, it was in the last couple of days. It came and went. So there's been a lot of discussion on social media from a number of talking heads. From other NFL running backs about this situation. The fact that the Giants, the Raiders, and the Cowboys, particularly the Giants and the Raiders, obviously Tony Pollard is young. He's still kind of somewhat unproven in terms of his ability to be a lead back. He's very talented, very explosive, dynamic, what have you. He was a better running back than Ezekiel Elliott was last year, but he hasn't been a primary running back in his system before. He hasn't handled 150, 200 carries in a season, or even 150 to 200 touches in a season to this point in his career.
Doesn't sound like a high number.
That's not really that high of a number, and he hasn't handled that number to this point in his career. So you can sort of understand where the Cowboys might be a little bit unwilling to give some big amount of money to Tony Pollard. But the Giants with Saquon Barkley, the Raiders with Josh Jacobs, why are they unwilling to give out the bag for a running back?
Because
I want to talk a little bit about our thoughts on running back contracts and compensations tonight.
Well, I mean, with compensation at any job, like what you're worth and what you get paid is what you can leverage from your employer.
Yeah.
So at the running back position in the NFL, it's sort of been found out that running backs are kind of expendable, kind of a dime a dozen. And like when you have a young running back, you have him on his rookie deal. And as he's approaching free agency or getting a new deal, he's pretty much used up at that point. And you can send him up the road and get somebody else in here who can do just as well. So that's why running backs don't really command big salaries because, they can just get somebody else in here to do the same thing. For the most part, if you block for a guy, he's going to do well. And if you don't block for him, he's not.
Yeah, and part of it is also, it's not just the fact that, running backs are expendable, because I don't always agree that that's true. I do think, though, that running backs have a short shelf life, and the problem is that they exhaust that shelf life before they get onto the open market. like we're talking about right now, right? Like this would be what, year 5 for Saquon, or year 6.
Year 6, I believe.
Yeah. So like, and he's had injuries already, and Josh Jacobs is going into year 5, and the way that these teams see it is that, okay, these guys are good now, but they've got a lot of wear on the tires. So do I want to shell out market value for these guys? The answer is no. The issue here for them is the fact that the draft suppresses their wages. It does it for every player, but especially running backs, because they're not typically picked in the top 5, right? Like they're usually picked first, second. Some look at Isaiah Pacheco.
Even if they are picked in the top 5, I mean, it's a pretty significant suppression of wages for any rookie player.
Yeah, that's the point of the draft.
Are always, team friendly.
Like that's the point of the draft, is to suppress rookie wages. Like if Trevor Lawrence came out of the draft and got market value, he wouldn't get $8 million a year that he got for being the number 1 pick. He'd get 3 times that at least, probably 4 times.
What did Sam Bradford get when he came out? He was the last quarterback to get that big number 1 pick money.
He got like $60 million, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, that's ridiculous!" And
well, it kind of was.
Okay, but that was because it was Sam Bradford. He was made out of glass. But...
So his deal was $78 million for 6 years, with $50 million of it guaranteed.
Okay,
that's Sam Bradford.
Okay, but that's still pretty cheap by today's standards for quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about someone like Trevor Lawrence, who was seen as a generational prospect, he's not getting he's getting a lot more than what Sam Bradford got in today's market.
He's probably getting like $15 million a year at least.
At least, like without question.
Obviously, it's not. You haven't seen him at the NFL level, so I don't think that he's going to get the market level of like a veteran NFL quarterback who's already proven they can do it at this level.
Well,
you're not quite going to get there,
Urban Meyer,
but you're gonna still get a significant boost from what the rookie contracts are based on
think about it
in the draft.
But think about it in this context. Trevor Lawrence was seen as a can't-miss prospect. If he was allowed to go on the open market around the NFL, no draft, all 32 teams get a shot at him, he absolutely would have gotten paid damn near close to market value, because teams are like, we're going to invest in this guy because we think he could be our franchise quarterback. They're willing to do that just to keep him away from other people, just to make sure that they've got a future. But that's not really an option here, because you have a scheduled payment for number 1 pick, number 2 pick down the list. And that's really what kills these running backs, is the fact that that's all you get. And then most people see you as
used up. Most of the time, the majority of NFL running backs do not get a second contract, because the average lifespan of an NFL running back is about 3 years in the league.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you have the elite players are going to last longer than that. Saquon Barkley has lasted longer than that. Josh Jacobs has lasted longer than that. A lot of these guys are the top guys are going to last longer than that, but still, even them, they're typically going to maybe get one more contract after their rookie contract, and they're not getting a lot because in the NFL, we pay you for what you're going to do, what we expect you to do, and we expect you to fall off a cliff eventually. We expect you to go the way of Todd Gurley, where he got a big contract and then got hurt. Where we expect you to go the way of Le'Veon Bell, where he sits out a year, leverages it for a big contract with the Jets, has a terrible year with them, and continues to fall off the cliff and out of the league. We don't... to that end, is there ever going to be a running back that has a prayer of sniffing the all-time rushing yards record, Emmitt Smith's record?
Oh, no.
At this rate, how could you? If nobody's being allowed to run for more than 5 years in the league, nobody's being used, and certainly not as a bell cow for that long.
If there's anybody on the earth who's athletic enough to conceivably do that, he's not playing running back, right? Like you put him at quarterback or receiver or something.
But if you think about a lot of the players, guys like Emmitt Smith, guys like Barry Sanders, they didn't really have the build for a wide receiver, especially not Emmitt Smith. He had a running back build. Like, he was a ground and pound kind of a guy.
Well, yeah, like the point is that the running back position, that's the blue collar position on the field. That guy gets hit every time he touches the ball, unless he houses it. But he's pretty much always getting popped.
A lot of times they have to break some contact.
Yeah, but they're pretty much always getting popped. Yeah. And, You know, it requires a level of grit and it requires a certain build, like you said, Corey. But it also lends itself to injuries. It lends itself to short shelf lives. That there's really no way to extend it. And with the nature of the NFL, where it's a pass-first league, it's going to be probably for the rest of our lives a pass-first league because that's exciting. It's not really feasible for running backs to get that second big contract. Like, look at the contracts we've seen that have been given out. Those are virtually universally considered the worst contracts in football. Ezekiel Elliott's contract was constantly pointed at as a pain in the ass for Dallas. That's why they had to trade Amari Cooper away. Because they're like, well, we got this albatross of a contract because we've got this running back who's paid like he's one of the 5 to 10 best players at his position, and he's not that anymore because he's old and we wore him down. You look at what happened to Le'Veon Bell. The Steelers deliberately ran him into the ground while he was cheap. Like they said, we're going to make him touch the ball 400 times while he's on here earning peanuts for whatever he was doing. And then when it's time to actually pay him, we're not going to pay him. Yeah, we're going to let a dumb team do it. And we talked about Todd Gurley as well. So the only way for these players to really get what they're worth is if you give them an opportunity to earn that on the front end when they're on their rookie contracts. But that's just not the nature. The CBA doesn't allow for that. Like, the players negotiated it, but the thing is, the players that negotiate it at the top of the line are veteran players. Like, who are the top guys that on the CBA during the negotiation in 2010, before the 2011 season? It was Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady. Yep. Those are quarterbacks. Those are future Hall of Famers. They've already got their money. They're going to get plenty more of their money. And, the running backs just don't necessarily have as big of a voice because this exclusively affects them.
Yeah.
Right? Like we talk about...
Yeah, no, this affects them more than any other position.
Yeah, we talk like the different rules for quarterbacks. Quarterbacks basically don't have to give a damn about the CBA because everybody's going to bend over backwards to take care of them. The running backs are the polar opposite. Mm-hmm. So, like, they're just not in a position to negotiate because they have to negotiate as an entire players association, and they can't just have a running backs union, which is kind of what they need, but they ain't got it. So they're kind of just stuck.
One current player that weighed in on this that had a really interesting perspective to me was Austin Eckler, running back for the Los Angeles Chargers. So he and the Chargers eventually reached an agreement to sort of restructure his contract in some way over the offseason. But initially, at the end of the year, he was asking for a trade, and the Chargers gave him permission to seek out a trade. But they basically were saying, like, okay, you can seek out a trade, but we expect to receive this, and this in compensation. And we're talking like high draft picks. Mm-hmm. So Eckler is sitting here like, okay, so you recognize my value. Mm-hmm. Like, you have very high standards for what you're going to get in return from another team that wants to, get my services as a running back. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to you retaining me, you're not interested in shelling out anything remotely similar to that kind of compensation. You're not willing to give me a bag that shows that you value me as much as what you're demanding in a trade shows that you value me as. Mm-hmm. That really that stood out to me as the teams clearly understand that these players are worth more than what they are paid on their rookie deals. They're worth more than what they're paid on second deals, generally speaking. Unless they get hurt and can't play that contract out, which, yes, does happen sometimes, but them on the field is worth more than what they're getting paid even on a second deal. So the question, I think, has to become at some point, what do we do about this? How do we fix this in some way? Is there a way for us to add, a version of arbitration to the NFL where players can say, okay, like, I'm performing at this level and my team is relying on me to this level, right? I'm getting this many touches, I'm getting this percentage of the running back share in my offense, and I'm performing well doing it. I deserve more than what my rookie contract is giving me. Like, is there a way for us to go that route? I don't know. I think it would be really difficult with the salary cap the way that it is, because if you negotiate a higher price through arbitration or a higher contract through arbitration, that's going to affect, your cap number, and you may not have the space to handle that. So I don't really know what the correct answer is, but it seems like something should be done because running backs are getting boned on this deal.
Yeah, I mean, parents don't let your kids grow up to be a running back. I mean, that's really all there is to it. I feel like, the running back position might be sort of phased out or something, or there aren't going to be
But can
any.
it truly be phased out? Because even though it is a passing league, the running game is still incredibly important to NFL offenses, right? It counters the passing attack. It balances the passing attack, even if it's only utilized a little bit. It keeps the defense from knowing that you're going to throw the ball on every single play. It enables play action to be effective, so you can run pass plays, but have the defense not know right away that it's a pass play if you run it well. The running game is never going to be entirely phased out, and quite honestly, I don't think it's going to be phased out any more than it already has. I don't think that it makes a lot of sense for us to get more pass heavy than what we are now, because I think that's going to ultimately make passing less effective.
Yeah.
And if passing gets less effective, it also becomes less fun. So yes, passing is fun. Passing puts fans in the stands. But if it gets less effective, then it's going to lose both of those qualities. So I don't think that we're ever going to see a running game get phased out more than it has to this point. And if anything, I feel like the running game may need to make a slight resurgence. Maybe not significant, but some teams probably are not running the ball enough, quite honestly, right now. And while that doesn't necessarily have to be, bell cow running backs in every offense, there still are only so many running backs out there, and especially if they're not getting paid and people are following your advice, Evan, and saying, well, I'm not going to grow up to be a running back. Screw that. I'm not going to make any money that way.
Yep. Right.
Well, then that's going to mean there's less running backs available to have a running back by committee approach as an offense.
I mean, I think the running back's still going to be by committee. It's just
But you're going to have fewer of them available to build a committee.
Yeah.
But if it's just like anonymous people, then now the effectiveness of the running game is completely undone.
And you're right. You just block for them, right? They're not jabronis like us running the ball. They're pro athletes.
But if you lower the standards so that only the cheapest available athletes are willing to play running back, then you're going to compromise the position as a whole, and you're not going to have an effective running game. The running back still matters. You can't be slow or not shifty or not know how to make a cut. Let me look at Trent Richardson. That guy was athletic, right? But he couldn't play. He had no idea what he was doing. He had no vision. Imagine if every jabroni that came in the league had a defect of that magnitude at the running back position. It would completely compromise it.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Would you want to watch that? Because I don't think I would.
I mean, use the Trent Richardson example. That's
he was
that's an indictment.
He was a top 3 pick in the draft. And then was traded for a first-round pick after it was clear he couldn't play.
The Browns picked him, or the Colts?
The Browns picked him, and then they traded him to the Colts for the Colts first-rounder, and then they used that pick to draft, I believe, Johnny Manziel. So it was a colossal disaster all around.
But, so let me put it this way. So I just looked up, to counter Evan's point, I looked up the PFF's offensive line ranks following the 2019 season. Okay? Ranked 28th in the NFL, the New York Jets. Okay? That was the year that Le'Veon Bell went to New York, coming off of his year off
yes,
football.
I watched those games because I drafted Le'Veon Bell in fantasy.
So,
and
if the key is just put a good offensive line in front of your guy,
they just didn't do that.
Why didn't some other team go and get Le'Veon Bell after that? Why did Le'Veon Bell just end up out of the league?
Because he was cooked.
Yeah.
How do we know he was cooked? Maybe if we had put him behind a good offensive line, he would have been good because he's not some jabroni like the three of us.
I thought he was a jabroni. Right?
I always
he
thought
didn't have any juice.
Le'Veon Bell, frankly.
The point that I'm making is it's not as simple as just block for a guy, especially because not every offensive line is good at blocking for running. You're gonna have about 10 teams that are good at it. You're gonna have about 10 teams that are so inconsistent, and you're gonna have 10 teams that are just absolute crap at blocking.
And then what are the other two?
And the other two are just throw them wherever you want. they don't even block. They don't even bother trying. Blocking, what's that?
They're out there playing on 7 on 11.
I thought I'd just stand here. I thought I'd give the ball to the quarterback and stand here.
I mean, ask Alejandro Villanueva. That
your boy.
Oh my God,
Your boy,
I can't
Big
think
Al.
of any other athlete who's played on one of my teams that I've hated more.
Not even DJ Stewart.
No.
Again, the point is, it's not as simple as just block for the guy.
Well, the Jets should have tried blocking for him.
Well, the Jets should have tried blocking
They
for
should
him.
have started with that.
Absolutely.
But then also...
But that's not going to solve the problem of running backs being underpaid. It's not going to make it acceptable that running backs are underpaid.
Well, and the fact that teams are still willing to use premium draft capital on a running back
Yeah, we just
suggests
saw
that
it this
they
year with
have
Bijan.
value. Yeah. Bijan Robinson.
Well, he's one of one, right? Like, it's not like...
That's how he's being described right now compared to a lot of players recently. But, you look back, and obviously he was a complete bust in the NFL, but the Cleveland Browns spent a 3rd overall pick on Trent Richardson.
And nobody looked at them like they were crazy.
And
Like, it
nobody
wasn't like
looked
everybody
at
said that was
them,
a
at them
dumb
like they were
pick.
crazy at the time. Obviously, hindsight is 20/20. We look back at that and we're like, woof.
Yep.
We do the same thing with Jamarcus Russell and the Raiders, even though at the time people weren't looking at them like they had 3 eyes.
But beyond that, you also got Leonard Fournette, you got Christian McCaffrey,
Yes.
you've got Todd Gurley. These were first-round picks. Like, if it was just as simple as I can find a running back anywhere, then why am I even drafting one on day 1 or day 2? Why
Right,
wouldn't I
you
wait
shouldn't.
until...
Yeah, again, granted,
But people
very
do,
end
and
of the
they're
first
successful.
round, but the last first-round pick a few years ago was Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Well, how well's he doing?
When was the last time you saw like a
Yeah,
5th-round running
solid
back just
rookie
become a reliable top 5 to 10 player in the league at the position?
I mean, wasn't Austin Eckler undrafted?
Sure, Austin Eckler was undrafted.
Colorado
Arian Foster
State
was
or something.
undrafted. Tony Romo was undrafted. Like, you're gonna have those occasional gems that just get discovered somehow, but weren't known quantities,
Also,
or just
Austin
were
Eckler doesn't have a good line, so it doesn't really make sense that he's good, except for the fact that he's just good.
Yeah.
He's a difference maker despite his mediocre offensive line and bad coaching.
Oh, right.
And
your
keep in
boy,
mind, last year he was very heavily utilized in the pass game and very underutilized in the run game.
and he was great.
And so maybe he should not even, be subject to the running back cap salary structure or whatever.
The point is that there's value to be had at the running back position, and it's not like it's just dumb teams picking them. It's teams like the Chiefs that are saying, "Hey, let's go get a running back. Let's go get him." The Saints do that. They've had running backs picked in the early rounds. They picked Mark Ingram in the 1st round. They picked Alvin Kamara in the 3rd round. Like, why wouldn't they just wait till the 7th round? Like they're a kicker or something. Like it's ludicrous. These are athletes. They matter. You got to be faster than people. You're not a kicker who's a fake football player.
Yeah, and I
That's
saw
not a real
a
football player.
statistic that the
it's a
average,
gimmick.
and granted there are more running backs than there are kickers on NFL depth charts, and some of them are going to have much lower contracts, but the average NFL kicker makes more than the average NFL running back. Even with some of the bigger contracts that some running backs do have, the average is lower for the running back position than it is for the kicker position. Even with the bad running backs who have lower contracts, that just seems unconscionable to me, considering running backs are actually taking a pounding on every play.
They're actually playing football.
I mean, I will say though, if you're a bad kicker, you're not getting paid by anybody, right? Like, Shankapotami
Okay,
don't
but
exist.
I'm just
in
going
the
to say there are not 30... If there are 32 good kickers in this country, somehow a lot of them are not being discovered by NFL teams, because there are a lot of bad kickers that are being put out there every Sunday.
That's true.
I still feel like anybody can tote the rock reasonably well if you block for it.
Double doink anybody?
I mean, where's he at right now? Out of the league.
But he was in the league to do that.
Yeah, they kept him around.
Yeah, out of the league. Cody Parkey.
So I
So
don't
we
have
got
the
nowhere.
answers.
I
I don't think any of us have the answer to this conundrum, but clearly something does need to be done, and hopefully when it comes time to negotiate the next CBA, they figure out a way to do right by these running backs, because these guys put their bodies on the line every game. They take a lot of pounding, and they are not getting paid well for it, in my opinion.
They're also the foundation of a big part of the reason we watch football on Sundays and Mondays and every other day it's on, is fantasy football.
Yeah.
Like, let's keep it real. Fantasy football is the reason why we watch Red Zone as much as we do. Otherwise, we just watch our own teams. I mean, we wouldn't care about this. But fantasy football drives audiences, and running backs drive fantasy football teams. So, you know, they're a big part of the viewing experience.
And as much as I enjoy toe drag swag, Angry Runs is where it's at on
Angry
Good
Runs
Morning
is
Football.
Great. I love being Angry Run.
So
going to work.
we need to
Well,
show our
football
appreciation for these
That's
running
true. I
backs
never
by
watched
making
it
sure
either.
that they get compensated fairly for their services.
I'm sure there's some that can be figured out. I just, I don't have the expertise to suggest something that would be a good idea.
Yeah. So, that is all we have on our show notes. Any late breaking news? Any last minute things we need to
No,
converse about, or are we all set?
I think we're good.
Okay. So, obviously, the fact that we're talking about the NFL means that we are right around the corner. Pretty soon we'll be announcing our 2023 NFL Picks competition. Likely will run the same way that it did last season, picking against the spread each week, but we will announce that in the next couple weeks. We'll have a fantasy football preview show in a few weeks. We're getting close to that. I know, we're about a month away from that one. We'll have our NFL preview show, previewing the AFC and the NFC, and making our predictions for playoffs and end-of-year awards and everything else. It's an exciting time of year, guys. I'm telling you, I am getting so pumped.
I'm not that excited just because football season means it's going to start getting cold again. And I don't want it to get cold again.
I mean, that's also true.
I mean, yeah, but I'm excited for some football.
I don't get excited.
so excited
I don't
for
get
some
excited
football.
until I see my fantasy team, and then I start getting excited.
And then you start losing. You had a bad year last year. You and Andrew.
I mean, yeah, but
Put in the same sentence as and Andrew.
but I
Andrew hasn't had a
suboptimal.
good
but
year
I
in
also
a while.
but I also sold halfway through the season, and I still managed to avoid the Sacco, so mission accomplished.
That's true. You did manage to avoid
Yeah,
the sack.
I had no
Speaking
good
of which,
players.
we still got to make sure that Will gets something Ravens to wear during the draft this year.
Could have come up with something better than that, man.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't want to be too mean.
Should have made him take the SAT. Don't you proctor the SAT over it, and that's something that's going on?
I don't proctor it.
Oh, okay.
Circle beard of shame. I think that's the move.
All right, let's go ahead and get out of here. If you made it this far in the show through our shenanigans, we appreciate you listening. Be sure to hit that like or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening on. We stream our shows live on YouTube, and then you can also catch us after the fact on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, whatever your podcatcher of choice is. If you have another podcatcher of choice and we are not on it, reach out to us. Let us know. You can find us on Twitter at SportsBallers18, or you can reach out to us by email, thesportsballers@gmail.com. We do also have a Facebook page, which is the Sports Ballers Podcast. You can find us there. If you'd like to follow us individually on Twitter, I am at Cory Puffett. Eric is at Quagmire67, and Evan is at Evan_Ash13. I think thought there was one other thing that I want to talk about, but maybe not. I guess that's it. So any shout-outs for today before we get out of here?
Yeah, I got one. Shout out to Manny Machado, who hit his 300th career home run over the weekend and hit his 301st tonight.
Oh, wow.
For the
for him.
dads. I
I think on my bench.
think people have maybe underappreciated Manny a little bit, just, not in terms of how good he is, but in terms of how great he is. Like, 300 home runs is nothing to sneeze at, and he's 31 years old. So there's a realistic possibility he ends up flirting with 500 dingers, which is not something that Orioles fans thought was realistic when we first came up. We didn't think he was going to be hitting 35 homers every year, but he's turned into that dude, and I'm happy for him. That's a lot of dingers.
Yeah.
Good for him.
I was in the barn when he hit his third home run ever.
Well, now he's hit 100 times that many.
Yes. So congrats to him. Guess shout out to Hershey Park for putting up with us fools once again. And shout out to the Buzz Bars crew who just made an announcement concerning Hershey Park. So, there's that. And I don't know. I don't have anything else.
Shout out to Toby's Dinner Theater and all the actors and actresses over there who are also the waiters when you eat there. And
Oh, you went? When did you
so
go to-
Rashonda and I went this past weekend with some of my family to see Escape to Margaritaville. I'm not a Jimmy Buffett fan. I don't particularly like most of his music. There's a few songs that, you know, they're
I don't know
poppy
anything about
enough
Jimmy
and
Buffett.
catchy enough that, you know, I don't hate them, but
Jimmy
generally
Burger,
not a
man.
Jimmy Buffett
Paradise.
fan. But it was actually a very entertaining show. I very much enjoyed my time. This was probably, so we started going to Toby's with my family for once for every show that they do this year. We've gone to see, let's see, the first show that we went to was Something Rotten, and then we went and saw,
Can't have been that bad, was it?
I don't know why I'm forgetting what the other one that we saw was, but we saw another show in between the two. I don't know why we saw Grease.
Oh,
And that was fun. I've never actually seen the movie before, but I
okay.
enjoyed the show quite a bit.
I think I've seen that.
And then, so now we have this, and the next show we're going to go to is Sister Act, and then Miracle on 34th Street. This was the only one that I wasn't particularly jazzed for, but I enjoyed myself. It was a very fun show.
Excellent.
Oh, I have a Toby's Dinner Theater story. We went on a field trip in 5th grade. What?
I'm sorry, I gotta go to the bathroom. Go ahead, tell your story.
Anyway, we went on a field trip there in 5th grade, and one of my classmates just had a special talent for breaking things with his head. So, like, he said anyway that he was resting his forehead on the bus window as we were leaving, and then like the bus hit a bump, he hit his head and broke the window.
Nice.
So
Nice. I went to Toby's in 8th grade with a class field trip too. We saw Beauty and the Beast. It was a good time.
I saw Beauty and the Beast when I was probably about that age. I was with my family, but that was the first time I'd ever been to Toby's, and I had not been back until we went to see Something Rotten this year. So now we're making it kind of a regular thing, and I'm quite enjoying it. All right, so those are our shout-outs. That will do it for this week's episode. We will plan to have a show for you next week, and that will be the last show of Season 5 of the Sports Bars podcast, because as soon as the calendar turns to August, we are into our 6th year as a show. How crazy is that, guys?
there are
Pretty
2 more
crazy.
shows this month. Oh no, there isn't, because 2 weeks from now is August 1st.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh,
Yep.
okay.
Beginning of
Rocking and
August
rolling.
is- yeah.
Yes, indeed.
So we appreciate, especially those of you who have been listening for the majority of our 5-year run, and even for those of you who are newcomers to the show. We're happy to have you, and hopefully we'll be continuing this for another 5 years or more. We enjoy doing this. That's really why we do it.
It's not because people listen, because we have a grand total of 0 comments in the chat.
Well, we have some people watching right now.
Oh, okay.
And
Well,
that's,
nice of y'all
and
to
that's
say
probably
something.
gone down a little bit since we're rambling at the end of the show, and maybe they have to go to the bathroom. And unlike Eric, they're not.
We
being
were
held
rambling
hostage.
at the
They can
beginning,
go.
middle, and end.
I can go anytime I want. I'm just trying to, make it to the end.
Dear.
Well, we will go ahead and make the end now. So thank you so much for listening. Join us next week for the Sports Bars podcast. For Eric and Evan, I'm Cory. See you next week.